Don't panic, that's the good motto.
Yeah, that's right.
So good morning everyone, Peter Racy here, Foundation Expo 88 YouTube channel. And it is a great honour actually to be interviewing this morning Lawrie Smith, Landscape Director of Expo 88. And if people just bear with me a little bit as I do a little bit of housekeeping. Laurie's short form curriculum vitae will be found in the playlist description. And Lawrie, you are in the process of preparing for the John Oxley Library some documentation, which is the reason why these series of interviews have been brought into being. And I just wanted to start off because Rick Birch was sort of introduced into the world of Expo 88 by a visit to the LA Olympic Games by Bob Minikin. And I understand that you came into the Expo 88 narrative via personal contact from Sir Llew Edwards. So can you just give us a little bit of confirmation or background as to how you came to be involved in World Expo 88?
That's a long story really, Peter. It's a very interesting one too that goes right back actually to 1974 when, as a young landscape architect, I attended the Vienna International Garden Exposition. And I vowed there, because it was such a fantastic place to go for the 6 months that it ran too, that not that I was there for 6 months, but I said, right, I'm going to do whatever I can do for Australia to host this type of thing and to be involved with them. I'd basically been, if you might like to call it an expo junkie, I'd visited almost every expo that I could over the years since then, and garden festivals as well. And so when the time came to submit my credentials for the position at World Expo 88, I had a pretty good outline of my experience with these. And also just so happened that, not that it had any bearing on it at all, but through family connections I did know Sir Llew vaguely, and so that was wonderful to see him. And he said, well, put in your credentials, I know what you've been doing, and well, you'll just sort of be selected if you seem to be the most appropriate guy. So that's what happened. So that was basically in 1983 when I was appointed to the position along at the same time with Jim McCormick and Graham Bly with By McCormick 88 as the project architects. And and the rest is history.
It is indeed. So it sets the basis, and now below us, people will see the scanned image of the first point, because in your documentation that you're preparing for the John Oxley Library, and I've actually seen 8 of these documents where we're just talking to the first one, and it is an absolutely fascinating history. So World Expo 88, it gave Brisbane a world stage. And I must admit, I hadn't really been fully aware of just how, in the great amount of detail that you went to in presenting Queensland via the Brisbane World Expo 88 stage. And so can you just give us it must have been an absolutely fascinating process of you sort of starting out with the seed, the kernel of the idea, and then developing it. And I think the background behind you is a really great example of just how it all came together.
Yeah, Peter, it certainly was a very important process. I think it all began with the day that I was appointed to the position. I can still hear Sir Llew saying it to me. He said, look, I know you've been to a lot of expos, but this one here in Brisbane is going to be special, and I want it to be the greenest exposition ever. And I want it to be green and wonderful and colourful on the first day and on the final day and on every day between it for 6 months. can you do it? Without thinking, I said, yes, Llew, no problem. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, not really thinking that, you know, we had, you know, sort of 5 years, basically 5 years lead time to organise it. And we did it. Had a great team of people working together at Landplan, the company, my company, and working with all of the other people who were involved with Expo. And certainly from the early days, it was basically that combined process between Jim McCormick, Graham Bly, the architects with us, and integrating it. That was the important thing, that was all integrated together. And so with the Expo landscape, so often landscape is the last thing that's done. And it just becomes like the icing on the cake. And it's rather nebulous and really not of much consequence. But with World Expo 88, with Sir Lew's instruction to us, it had three parts in it, really. The first part was that we were going to present to the world in Brisbane a collection of the most diverse plant material from the various parts of the world, the participating nations where they came from, to demonstrate to the world that this was an international event being held in Australia to celebrate our bicentenary in 1988. Then the next thing was to have a network of unique Australian native plants that basically permeated right through the site, but came into major core collections at particular places like the Australia precinct and the Queensland precinct and others. And that was to demonstrate, you know, how unique and wonderful the flora of Australia is, again, on the world stage. And so then the third section was the fact that it was being held here in southeast Queensland. So once again, we're going to focus on the incredible subtropical plants that we have here, and to create something very magical with those, particularly in the Queensland precinct. And the result of that was the epiphyte forest, which of course we can talk about later. But those three things, I think, gave the Expo a very, very green image, and it linked to the whole sort of process of what Sir Llew wanted to see Expo to be. A wonderful place, a magic place to be for 6 months. And I think we know 30, 40 years later, people are still remembering just what it was like, and every single part of it. You know, I think it was one of those events that everybody got the Expo in their blood, and you can't get rid of it. I can tell you, after all these years, you know, you can't get rid of it. It was a magic place to be, and it was even more magic for me to spend those 5 years basically before World Expo 88 opened in making it all happen. And it was a lot of work, but I wouldn't have missed it for a minute.
And the amount of work is quite incredible. There's no doubt about that. Now, Lawrie, as you were talking then, people would have noticed up on the screen below us were some of the pages that you were referring to. Now, I know that people can't read the documentation, but it's to give the feel of what you're talking to. And at the end of the YouTube will be the pages put up a little bit more slowly. But as I said, what is going to happen is that the documentation will be up on the World Expo 88 Facebook page in the annotated format and in the final presentation format that's going into the John Oxley Library. Now, Lawrie, if we can just cut here, and we'll be coming back in a second as we talk about you and John Truscott. So thank you, Lawrie. That was a really great introduction to this series.
Thank you, my pleasure.